It's Toronto's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
Today, we're with Jeffrey Doucet, CEO of Career JSM, a software company that helps job seekers manage their job search. So, Jeffrey, welcome to Canada's podcast. And, as I was just saying to you beforehand, we're going to cover your story, but we're going to kind of go in and out of, useful tips during this crisis that you might be able to throw into it. And I think, I just read about the fact that you're opening up your career wellness platform for people that have lost their jobs due to COVID-19. So why don't we kick off? That seems pretty useful. So why don't we kick off by telling us a bit about that?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Thrive Career Wellness Platform. And so our business model is we offer our services to large corporations who, whenever they are either redeploying employees or laying off employees, they will give them access to our career wellness platform, which will help them transition and find their next job opportunity. And that includes everything from software to, building a resume, to accessing career coaches, accessing upskilling or reskilling platforms, and software to track and manage your job search, a real full suite of tools. And we've been doing this for quite a while. And what we realized was that once this crisis hit, particularly the first wave of this crisis, a lot of the individuals who have been impacted by COVID are not going to get any sort of career transition services. And their employers are not in a position to offer any career transition services, especially industries like small businesses, restaurant, hospitality, tourism. A lot of these companies saw their revenues drop by 80%. And these are to 100%. And
it's awful. It's awful. I mean, it really is.
It's awful. And so we understood really quickly that, these individuals would not get access to our services. And we saw that shocking news that everyone saw that, 500,000 Canadians applying for unemployment insurance. So at that point, we decided to do what we could to support those individuals. So we worked really quickly to make our software available for free to a lot of those individuals. And so we launched about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, that individuals who were impacted by COVID could access our website, thrivemycareer.com, and they'll see a prompt to request access to our software. And it's really simple. They can, request access, and they will be then invited to our platform and get access to a wide array of our software tools to help them find their next job opportunity.
Fabulous. That's terrific. Okay, well, that's a great start in terms of, coming in now, but let's sort of go back to the theme, and it's your story that we really wanted to hear about, Jeffrey. I know you went to Mac. We were just saying, you know exactly where I am in Hamilton, but tell us a bit more about yourself. Why did you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a good question. I did not anticipate doing this. And so I went to McMaster University. I graduated in 2013, and I was really involved in student politics during my undergrad. I actually met my business partner, who's our chief technology officer, Tristan, probably in second year of university, because he worked at the print and design studio and worked on a number of projects together. And after I graduated, I was elected as the vice president of finance of the Students' Union at McMaster, the McMaster Students' Union. And during that year, I spent a lot of time arguing with the career department that they were not doing enough with the money that students gave them for career services. And I felt that the software that students got access to whenever they were in university to help them find their next job was antiquated, outdated, and not, quite frankly, very helpful. And so, Tristan and I talked a lot about this problem. I'd written my LSATs and planned to go to law school, and he had started a startup that ended up getting acquired, and we decided it'd be good to work together on solving this problem. So we started building software to help job seekers manage their job search, and started selling it to university and colleges to start out, and the rest is history. It's evolved a lot, but that's why we got started. Really just wanting to help people find their next job.
Okay. Coming back to the crisis we're in, which is sort of, I don't think we understand what damage it's doing to the economy yet. I think we might, next month and the month after. You know, is there a silver lining that you see coming out of this?
Oh, that's a really good question, and I think it's hard to think about a silver lining sometime right now because things are so bad. But I think that just like on a personal level, you start to realize like how much you enjoy working with some of your colleagues and with some of your friends, and start to take like almost some of these small experiences that we had in our day-to-day life that didn't seem like a big deal. You're no longer taking them for granted. And I think that really easily, like on a personal level, that's been something that I'm realizing more like on a corporate level. I think that there are, and in a business perspective, I think a lot of companies, will start to adopt some more flexible and transparent like work styles for their employees, whether that's by implementing more software so that individuals can work easily from home, or be more flexible about what it means to be a worker from your employee. Do you need to be in the office 9 to 5? I think that you'll start to see some of those positive outcomes, but we'll see how long it takes for things to return to normalcy.
Okay. Are you taking any advantage of the government subsidies that they're announcing? Have you been able to access any of them as yet?
So there's actually been a lack of clarity around what companies are eligible or not eligible for, and I know that especially in the startup ecosystem, it's been very challenging to understand that. So like at this point, we have not been taking advantage of any of those subsidies, and they might not apply to a company like ours. So we're proceeding as business as is, and we'll wait for a bit more clarity around what those subsidies mean. But right now, no, we haven't been taking advantage of any of those.
So is this the greatest challenge you face in the business? Because you've been doing this for a while now. Is there any other challenges that you've learned from that you could pass on?
Yeah, so I would say this is definitely the greatest challenge. I think one thing that's different about this challenge from a business perspective than any other challenge that I've faced to date is challenges that are just unique to your business can sometimes be very challenging, but they're easy to focus on. And what I'm personally finding right now is like I'm worried about my business. I'm worried about the health of my business. I'm worried about a lot of my friends' businesses. But then I'm also worried about like the health of my parents. My mom works in frontline healthcare at a hospital in Mississauga. Like I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the health of a lot of my colleagues. And so, I wasn't an entrepreneur in the 2008 recession. I was actually still in high school, but I think that in that case, you were still only worried about your business. There was not all these other social implications, which have made it like a lot harder. And I think that's the real problem right now, or not the real problem, but what really amplifies all of this is that this is not just a business problem. It's like a social health problem, and there's all these other issues. And I'll relate that to something else that I'm concerned about, in the sense that, whenever somebody loses their job and when there's a recession, there's like a lot of very challenging issues that they face. And we know that during a recession, rates of addiction go up, that rates of domestic violence go up. Like all these negative things happen due to job loss. Well, I was walking by a social services and employment center in Toronto the other week, and like they're not open. They're not open because they're not able to see patients or see people face to face because of social distancing. And so I think that those things are very concerning, because the second phase of how we return to normalcy, if social isolation is still in effect, it's going to make that return challenging. And those are things we're constantly thinking about and trying to think about how can software solve some of those problems. But it's challenging.
It is challenging. Over the long haul, will COVID-19 mean that you change your business model, you think? I mean, maybe it's too early to say. I don't know.
I think that it's created us to evolve our business model a little bit. We've talked in the past, so we're primarily a B2B business. So we only sell our services to enterprise through a traditional B2B, business-to-business sales cycle. We have always thought about becoming, okay, do we want to be more consumer-facing? Should we make our product more consumer-facing? And those are things that, you know, due to bandwidth, due to focus, due to resources, we haven't pursued up until now, just because of the business is growing and things of that nature. Obviously, given this crisis, and our team was really motivated to try to do something, you know, it's enabled us to start looking at, okay, do we want to invest in more consumer products, or do we want to, you know, look at distributing our products directly to consumers? What we've seen is that, and so that's still taking place. We're still in the early days of testing it. We're getting really positive feedback from users. So I wouldn't say so much as that we're looking to change our business, but it might cause a natural evolution.
I mean, I'm going to go back to my other series. Let's just move away from some of the situation stuff. But, you know, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self as you kind of were at university and peddling around there, kind of thing, politicizing around there, maybe?
You know, I think that the biggest advice, you know, I give myself, and this is something that I still struggle to adhere to today, and something that, you know, constantly focusing on is, you know, being able to focus on the right feedback and focusing on the feedback that's most relevant to what you're trying to do at this time, right? And so what I mean by this is you launch a business, you're an entrepreneur with one friend, you're with one business partner, and you launch that business. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting feedback from everybody on what you should be doing, how you should be doing that. And I think that the easy thing to do a lot of the time is to take all that feedback in, treat all that feedback at the same level of importance, and you can become almost overwhelmed with outside noise as to how you're running your business. What I've matured on, and what I've learned more when you're, you know, evolving as an entrepreneur or as an individual or as a professional or even as a student politician, is honing in on the feedback that, you know, really matters, and the feedback that is the most valid and relevant to what you're focusing on at that time. So, like, for example, right now, like, the feedback that a customer gives me is more important than the feedback that one of my investors gives me. And even if that investor sits on my board of directors and has invested a substantial amount of revenue into my business, not of revenue, of capital, I'm going to put the vice president of HR at a major Canadian corporation way above them in terms of what feedback I'm focusing on. And they get that, and they understand that when you articulate that clearly. And so, you know, as even a student politician when I was 20, I probably got too upset about what someone was saying on a Facebook thread about a decision you're making about a campus bar. And and those are certain things that I think I've gotten better at. But that's the biggest feedback, is like understanding what feedback you should be testing for and leaning in on that, because you can become scrambled eggs and listening to all these different things.
It's interesting. I'm just looking at some of my questions, which were kind of location based, but I think the last 3 or 4 weeks, you know, have made me realize that location based is less and less of a factor, or it's still there, but it's so much less of a factor for many businesses than it has been. I think I think that's something going forward. But on the advice side of it, and I ask this to everyone because I really like the answers. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
You know, that's a good one, and honestly, it's very simple advice. You know, call your customers and ask them what they need. And I think that, so, like, you know, Sir Terry Matthews, an iconic Canadian entrepreneur, is one of the investors in our companies. And, you know, he always goes off about how a lot of people overcomplicate business. They overcomplicate pricing models. They overcomplicate everything. You know, if you build a trusting relationship with your customers, you get them on the phone, you ask them what they want, and you ask them what they're willing to pay for it. And if they say they're going to pay for it, then you build it. And that is, I think, very simple, but a lot harder than it sounds like advice to execute on as an entrepreneur. It's very easy to like dream up new product ideas on your own. It's very easy to come up with complicated pricing models on your own, but it's very harder. It's a lot harder to have just a transparent conversation with your customer and just ask them what they need. So we're an extremely customer-centric company. It's driven by that sort of advice, and it's quite simple, but it's the smartest. It's the most easy advice to follow if you actually believe in it, and you take that as far as you can.
So let's go about to what I term rapid fire questions that are really focused on you and your response. Okay.
Yeah.
If you weren't doing what you do for work now, what would you be doing instead?
I think that I would be working in public policy and politics in some capacity.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I've always been interested in solving large problems on a large scale, and that's a way to do it.
Okay. So what book are you currently reading, listening to? I mean, I think we're all reading more because we're here. We're not going out when we can't talk with our customers and friends.
So I'm just looking at it, and this is the book that actually I read it probably a month or two ago, but it's the one that's resonated with me a lot recently. So that's the one I'm going to play. It's What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz, who's a venture capitalist, and it's a fantastic read. I really suggest anyone basically read it, any business leader read it. It's something that I particularly referenced a lot right now in this crisis. I think a lot of individuals and at your company are looking to their leaders to lead them through this crisis and taking direction from them. And that book is all about, you need to be what you preach. You need to, and that's how you lead. And I'm not sure. Have you heard of the book?
Yes, I have actually. Yeah. I haven't read it, so I shall. I'm going to read that.
You should. Just go ahead.
Okay, well, this is a good one because this also says when we're all socially isolated, I think you learn this a lot better. Are you a morning or a night person?
I'm a morning person, and I think that that's the one thing that became easy to forget whenever you're in your condo all the time. Like, I'm a get up, work out in the morning, get outside in the morning type person. And so 100% a morning person, the opposite of my business partner. So, but that's where we offset each other.
We're not all the same. That's good. So, and if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why would it be that word?
I would say, it's probably a combination of two words, but like aggressively pragmatic. I think that try to be like as aggressive as possible and do as much as you can with like realistic goals and outcomes.
Okay, that's good. Apart from COVID-19, is anything else keeping you up at night?
It's like a lot of things. Like, this is again, like I said, it's a very interesting time, and I think that everything that's related to why I'm waking up at night is probably related to COVID-19. But I think that it's the intersection that this virus has caused in all different facets of our life, and that's everything from how it's disrupted our daily work patterns to our health. And I think that there's the optimistic group that believes that this is going to return really quickly or to normalcy, and once the restrictions are lifted. I tend to be in the other group. I think that this is going to have a longer tail return to normal, and I think that we're going to see a lot of implications on that long tail return, and we haven't quite sorted that out entirely, as well as the geopolitical implications.
Yeah, I think I'm not so sure where we end up geopolitically, but I think I've been reading a fair amount about it. I think we're going to see an acceleration in trends. I mean, remote workforces were, were growing fairly dramatically anyway, but now it's it's a question of they will dominate, and local workforces will become, you know, very different. I mean, it's, I think, so certain worker trends will just, stay here. Others, I don't know what happens to sort of hospitality and things like that. I really don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, I think that there's a couple different groups of people though, and it's interesting is like at our company, like, probably the first week, a lot of people were like, "Oh, working remote, this isn't too bad. We're liking it," everything of that nature. By week 4, everyone's like, we want to be back in the office. Like, we don't like working remote.
Have you had to lay anyone off, or are you lucky you haven't yet? We're lucky we haven't had to do that.
Yeah, we're in a fortunate position where we have not had to lay anyone off.
Good. So, okay. Well, that's 2 good news stories. At least that's fine. And I'm going to ask the silly question at the end because I think we need some lightness about it all.
Yeah, sure.
Which is, there's a small tropical island in the middle of the ocean with only one phone booth and no internet. We drop you off there with no technology, and yeah, there's no COVID-19, but you can't use that as an excuse answer. Okay, at any time you can use the phone booth on the island to call a boat to come pick you up. How long would you last normally before making the phone call, and what would you do until then?
Okay, so just so I understand this, so I'm on an island. There's just a phone booth.
There's just a phone. You can make one phone call, and that's to say, "Come and get me." Otherwise, it's an island, desert island. You're on your own. What do you do?
Well, is there any reason why I'm not allowed? Like, is there any incentives to stay there?
That's your call.
See,
I'm not leading you.
See, this is the thing. I was like, I don't think I'd last very long. And that's like, I mean, but here, this is the joke. Like, if there was incentive to last,
there's a fishing rod. I mean, it's a beautiful beach.
Yeah,
those
maybe I'd last 3 or 4 days, and relax for 3 or 4 days and say, okay, I'm out of here. Got other things to do. If there was an incentive to stay there, like I'm a very incentive-based person. I probably would stay for a long time if I had to. But if there's no incentive, I'd probably relax for a little bit, get some sunshine, and then be out of there.
Okay, just one sort of parting shot. I mean, in terms of the future, I mean, you've given us some insights. Any big thoughts about where we go from here?
Yeah, so I do, and I think that the reality is that prior to COVID, a lot of these sectors that have been hit really hard by COVID were already starting transformations to change their sectors in the foreseeable future with technology. And so what I mean by this is that prior to COVID, banks were talking about there no longer being tellers. Retail companies, and we're talking about how there won't be a physical store anymore. And they were starting to look at how do they prep their workforce, retrain their workforce, and start to move a lot of those more services digital. They were expecting that to happen over the next decade. I think that is going to be dramatically accelerated over the next 4 or 5 years. And that, certain sectors of the economy aren't coming back, and that certain processes are going to change and they're not coming back. And those can be processes like in specific industries that we just discussed, but it can also be processes related to any other company. So I'll give you another example. What do you think has been one of the most stressful things about being an entrepreneur right now in COVID? You're probably not going to guess it.
No, I don't know.
Getting paid on time. And this is why.
I mean, from my perspective, my receivables projections are about 90 days off. I mean,
everybody no one, shockingly enough, most major corporations were not digital in their entire payment process, meaning that they still printed checks, they still had to have approvals in place, and now they're scrambling to change those. And once they change them, like, that's not coming back. And that is the sort of things that I think we'll see this like really quick acceleration. Same as government. Government is putting in new processes in different areas that previously it would take like 3 years to get approvals to do so, and now they're having to do them, and those won't come back. And so those are some of the positive things that I think will come out of this, is that positive business outcomes will change for the nature and for the better, and those won't come back. That's just a prediction that I have.
Okay. So, this always spurs sort of questions, and people sometimes want to get a hold of you, Jeffrey. How can people get a hold of you online if they have some questions?
So a couple of easy ways. If you're a Twitter person, you can find me on Twitter, Jeffrey_Doucet on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn, just typing in Jeffrey Doucet, or you can email me directly at jeffrey@thrivemycareer.com.
Thanks, Jeffrey. That was really great. Some good insights. Hopefully we helped a few people with their thoughts. And thanks very much for being on Canada's podcast.
No problem. It's great to have you. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening.